Before we go, I'm mostly be talking about the project here in New Hampshire, not this fire stuff, so just to set this up. So, let her rip.
Ready?
All right, here we go. No pressure. So, Barrett Hill is a 13-lot, 26-unit subdivision in Hudson, New Hampshire. We're going to be building this to net zero, and we're putting 17 acres into permanent conservation surrounding the subdivision. So let's dig in on this a little bit more. I'm going to talk about the project from the sensibility of a New Hampshire Yankee, with those qualities of frugality, independence, craftsmanship, healthy living, and we'll see if we can tie together how we're building this project against those sensibilities. So the first thing we're going to talk about is frugality and saving money, of course, right? So this is a existing building in southern New Hampshire, built in 1999 by a builder, very high quality. The monthly utility bills for this house are $660 per month between oil and electric. And that's, like I said, a very well built home. So let's compare that against our net zero house. When we get to net zero ready, we get that utility bill down to $150 a month. When we put the solar on, we zero out the utility bill. So that's $650 a month in operational savings by building this way. Now, the caveat is, it costs more money to build net zero. So if we look at the incremental cost to build net zero and that financing over a mortgage period versus those utility savings, it's the equivalent of putting $140 plus a month in your pocket. So it's paying you to go to net zero. And the asset still keeps a lot of value. You're also saving in frugality on resources. So we're 100% net zero. Over a 10-year life, we've got 80 tons of CO2 savings in operational carbon and 15 tons of embodied carbon savings in how we build the building. So it's a precious utilization of our resources. And just a little comment on that, when you build and put your site energy with the solar at the building, it's 3 times more efficient than when you do mineral extraction, transport to a power generation site and transmission over the line. So it's also efficient at the macro level of how we use it, create energy. Independence, we have solar and house scale battery in all of these buildings. So if the grid goes down, we keep on the heating and cooling, the refrigeration, some number of the lights, basically in perpetuity. So you're not reliant on the grid, you're not reliant on supply chain, you're on your own, live for your guy. We also are building these houses to be EV ready, and if you put in a bi-directional charger, you can take the energy from the battery in the car to power your home during an outage. And there is a lot of energy in the battery in your car. It's a little bit of a novel concept. From a craftsmanship perspective, we build to the 2021 building codes plus. These are 10-inch thick walls, European grade windows that are made in America. Everything is taped off to be airtight. So these buildings are built to last for a very, very long time. It's also a healthy environment to live in. We build to the Indoor Air Plus standard. We are constantly filtering fresh air through a system called an ERV, and we're filtering out allergens, pollutants, whatnot. And we also use low VOC materials within the construction materials themselves. So it's a very healthier environment. It's also a very pleasant environment to live in. It's about 50% quieter than conventional construction. If you've never been into a passive house, when you step inside, it's almost like a cocoon. It's just a really peaceful, quiet environment. So how do we achieve all this? It's very much an engineering-driven process, much more so than traditional house building. It starts with systems analysis, siting, then we do energy modeling, then we go through the architecture and MEP design, and then we get to costing. Usually the architects make something that's too expensive, and we have to optimize for performance and cost. So we make this airtight envelope, we put in very efficient mechanicals, we add the solar to get it up to 100% net zero, and then we add the batteries to give us that resilience and the ability to take advantage of things like time of use and demand response agreements. So there's a lot more to it, and that's the basic approach. This is what the site layout would look like, just at step 0, where you'll notice the buildings are laid out parallel to the road. This is conventional development methodology. But when you start to look at it from an energy modeling perspective, and we take solar loading into account, you'll notice that we've rotated all these houses. Simply by making that move, before we've even moved a shovel full of dirt, we've added 20% to the energy efficiency of these homes. So you really have to start at step 0, and it's a systems level approach. Then we go into energy modeling. There's a lot more to it than this one slide, but on the left-hand side, you see the uses of the energy. It's in our case, heating, hot water, big appliances, and then miscellaneous loads like laptops and TVs. And you balance that out with how much renewable you need, in this case, about 7,500 kilowatts, and that gets us to net 0. The end product is an attractive, open concept home, 100% electric, battery, solar, very healthy living. So we think this is an attractive product for the market, regardless of what you think of climate change and net 0. So does it work for apartments? The answer is absolutely yes. This is the Aspire residential piece of what we're doing. We're launching a fund right now to build a number of units in Florida. And it's the same methodology of design, construction, operations that drive apartments, the same as housing. So bottom line, this is very efficient housing. It's very high quality, and it's cost effective to construct and to own. So we think this is a win-win for the future of housing. Thank you.
Satili, Mr. Tom Satili, who has been in the HVAC industry for over 30 years. He joined Sun Amp Projects, Inc. as general manager in the spring of 2022 when the New York office was opened. Sun Amp Projects, Inc. is the U.S. subsidiary of Sun Amp Limited, a company based in Scotland. Tom?
John, an excellent job. You set the bar quite high. So I want to thank you for inviting me here today to participate in Hampshire Energy Week. My name is Tom Satili, and today I want to talk about Sun Amp, a world leader in thermal storage technologies. For 20 seconds is longer. So, storage technologies are going to be necessary to decouple generation from consumption. As we add more renewables to our electrical grid, this is going to become necessary. You can see here from the curve where the solar makes up the difference. So Sun Amp was a company formed in response to climate change. 40% of our energy is used for thermal outputs, so Sun Amp decided to focus on thermal storage. Thermal storage has a lot of advantages over electrical storage, about 1/3 the cost for the same amount of storage in roughly the same footprint. It has a much longer cycle life. Thermal storage was traditionally done with sensible heat using water in tanks. We are using phase change material. We take advantage of latent energy, which is much more energy dense than sensible energy. Sun Amp had to overcome 2 principal challenges of phase change materials. The first is its poor cyclability, which we've stabilized and been tested independently. And the second is the slow transfer of the heat out of the PCM when desired. Sun Amp has taken those innovations and commercialize them and has created thermal batteries, which we manufacture in Scotland. And there you see a picture of the cells with the heat exchangers in them. SunAmp has different phase change materials that change phase at different temperatures for different applications. The most popular one is our P58, which changes phase at 136 degrees, and that's used for the production of domestic hot water and space heating. We can create several different sizes of thermal batteries for different amounts of thermal storage to, again, customize the application. The thermal batteries can accept energy from many different inputs. Thermally, we can charge our batteries with an air-to-water heat pump, or a boiler, or a CHP, anything that can create a hot solution or a cold solution. Some have electrical heaters in them, so we can take advantage of renewable energy or time of use electric. Here's a comparison of a tank to our thermal storage. Besides the substantial reduction in size, we have about a quarter of the heat loss, probably a usable life of 3 to 4 times of that of a cylinder, and due to low volume of water content, reduced risk of Legionella and flood. Let's look at some case studies. Here we're decarbonizing a multi-family apartment building with the geothermal loop. We're utilizing a small water-to-water heat pump. We're using thermal storage to peak shave and reduce the size of the heat pump. Here's another example of peak shaving where 2 CHPs were put into Rural College to create electricity and thermal energy. The batteries will absorb that or store that excess energy when we have excess capacity, and then release it when the demand is greater than the generation. Again, another peak shaving time shifting example. We have a geothermal network linked to several different properties. Heat pumps pulling energy in and out of the loop, storing it in our batteries, again, allowing us to operate the heat pumps at different times of the day, take advantage of low-cost electricity. Here are some 4 case examples of decarbonizing the houses, going from a gas appliance to an electrical appliance, and again using thermal storage to peak shave and time shift. And not only are the carbon emissions lower, but their actual energy costs are lower. Thermal energy can also be used with existing systems to reduce the amount of fossil fuels consumed. Here we're replacing a traditional indirect tank with a thermal store. Monitoring the gas consumption, we found a 50% reduction, which we were quite surprised. We believe that this occurred because the first thing we're able to lower the boiling operating temperature, because the PCM could absorb the energy at a lower temperature. We reduced the cycle rates considerably. We also provide a low return temperature to promote condensation and increase efficiency. Again, another example of reducing fuel consumption in an existing system. We tapped into a geothermal loop and preheated the water, stored it in our batteries, and then used that to supplement the gas-fired water heaters. This project is still being monitored, but our projections indicate a 60% reduction in fuel costs and carbon emissions. The data is showing closer to 70%. In conclusion, storage will be necessary. It allows us to decouple generation from consumption. Both electrical storage and thermal storage will be needed. Thermal storage has a lot of advantages over electrical storage. It's made from sustainable supply chains. It's non-toxic. It's not flammable. PCMs allow us to maximize that thermal storage in a very compact, efficient way.
Chris Ricks. Chris Ricks is the CEO of StarQ, a small modular reactor developer of micro-reactors for critical infrastructure and crisis response. As a former U.S. Navy nuclear submarine officer, Chris holds expertise in reactor systems and operations. Ashore, he was selected as a program manager for autonomous underwater vehicles at the Pentagon, providing R&D and systems engineering support to the Department of the Navy Intelligence Activities. I didn't do a good job on that last sentence, but I'm sure Chris will clarify anything in that next step. Chris, come on.
No matter on the bio here, it's more about trying to delay and trying to go along. Ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Ricks, CEO of StarQ. We are a small modular reactor company focused on microreactors for critical infrastructure and crisis response. I wanted to take an opportunity today to discuss a couple things. Microreactors and New Hampshire's path for energy independence. Before we start, it's very helpful to look at the broader context. What are some of the mega trends that are going on that are impacting energy markets? And I would say one universal theme that we have seen is energy security is national security. In fact, these two phrases have become interchangeable when we've had engagements with stakeholders in the US and international. A couple mega trends, major power competition, supply chain dependencies, and war and regional conflicts. One thing to call out is that overall countries have been forced to reconsider how resources are intertwined, and I would say that the magnitude of these energy impacts and shifts are pretty significant, and they should not be overlooked. For a couple data points, China is dominating in solar and critical mining. That's good for ratepayers because overall global supply chains is reducing costs, but it's some unique dependencies. Last year, China deployed more solar last year than the U.S. has in its entire history. So how has the U.S. responded? I would say with unprecedented action. Some of this is good, right? So U.S. oil production, all-time high, 13 million barrels per day. The drawdown strategic reserve, the 40%, that was the largest in all-time history. That was to prevent the $100 at the pump. In terms of what does this broader context mean for New Hampshire? Direct action is required. You think about New Hampshire has some of the highest electricity costs, look at the reliance on natural gas, and also, what does new generation look like in broader New Hampshire? We believe that small modular reactors, portable, modular, shipping container-sized units should be a part of the solution. And key here is thinking about what does energy look like at the local level. And as Sam mentioned, I'm a former Navy nuclear submarine officer, and I believe that the U.S. Navy is actually it's an excellent case study. On this 453-foot long submarine, we had a power plant. That power plant powered all the houses in Manchester. So when you start thinking about what does small scale portable power plants look like, this is an excellent data. Overall, small scale nuclear is a game changer. We essentially had energy, resilience, independence. We were limited by food. We'd actually stack up the cans in the engine room, and as you get down, it's day 100, you can start walking normal again. You see those 12-inch cans. And to provide a historical perspective, this is more of a regulatory and a policy challenge than it is a technology challenge. From 1949 to 1975, U.S. built, operated 52 different reactor types. Additionally, I want to call out that there's already microreactors safely operating in densely populated cities today. So around the U.S., there's 31 microreactors that are tied to universities, MIT, UMass Lowell, Texas A&M. I have here the MIT 6 megawatt system. As you can see here, the overall footprint of the facility is about that of a football field. And the actual reactor itself is closer to a tennis court. So when you start thinking about what's possible, microreactors offer a lot more than just electricity. We're talking about revolutionizing industries, whether it's chemical manufacturing, pulp and paper, kind of providing process heat and hydrogen. Right? That's one of the unique things that we don't particularly kind of see today. In terms of challenges, navigating the regulatory landscape is definitely one of those key challenges. But I will say, the current licensing process is often by exception. It's kind of lengthy and long lead timelines, but there's some positive trends that are emerging. There's new congressional mandates aimed specifically at expediting the NRC's review to shorten those timelines. In terms of other challenges, talk about costs. All right, so we look at gigawatt scale plants, experiencing some of the cost overruns that they have seen. A lot of that is just due to the fact that it is particularly challenging to finance and manage these large-scale gigawatt systems. Overall, we're looking at circumventing these issues by adopting modular small-scale reactors, costing between $10 and $20 million, 10 megawatts, lifespan of up to 8 years. Right. In terms of safety, the key here is that microreactors have a passive safety system, such that there's no operator intervention required, which is different from the legacy systems that you've seen coming out of the 70s. The ability to load follow, you have smaller emergency planning zones, and then waste. So in the U.S., we rely on interim solutions like dry gas storage, as you see on the upper left, pending long-term federal policy updates. But there's some data points here. Finland leading with the first permanent waste storage, as you see here in the upper right. And just for context, an entire person's life can be powered by nuclear, and that waste would be reflective of cocaine. I want to give an opportunity to give some credit. I would say the state of New Hampshire is definitely leading the way, just in terms of the Nuclear New Hampshire Study Commission. Spent 2 years talking to industry, engaging with policymakers, trying to figure out what's in the realm of possible, what are the challenges and opportunities. My recommendation, let's continue to focus on a couple key areas. So one, to kind of actively shape our energy future, reach out, please contact myself if you're interested in looking at potential microreactor applications for your business community. Let's urge state officials to kind of press for an enhanced federal regulatory framework and kind of position New Hampshire as a leader in advanced nuclear. Kind of overall, a couple final thoughts. New Hampshire, microreactors is not a silver bullet. It's going to have to be a part of our portfolio approach. But when you talk about small-scale nuclear, it can have a big impact, especially when you're talking about economics, workforce, and providing for energy independence. Thank you for taking the opportunity to listen to and being here and part of the discussion. So thank you.
Our last presenter was Dulcie Madden. Dulcie is the CEO and co-founder of Dig Energy, an early-stage company focused on scaling affordable, distributed geothermal systems for delivering renewable energy. Prior to Dig, she was partner and head of partnerships at The Engine, an MIT-affiliated early-stage tough tech investment fund. Before joining The Engine, Dulcie was co-founder and CEO of Rest Devices, a startup that used sensors, hardware, and data-driven software to help families sleep better, which I could use. She also worked in southern India for 5 years, where she developed and scaled programs supporting maternal health and women's livelihood development. She has a BS in biology from Georgetown. Dulcie.
Okay, don't start at that. Okay, so before I get started, A, it's wonderful to see everyone here, and B, we are still basically totally stealth, so I can't talk a lot about the technology on stage, but I'm going to talk sort of around it. And if people have questions, you can come and talk to me afterwards, okay? Sound good? Okay, let's do it. Okay. All right, my name is Dulcie Madden. Thanks, Sam. I'm so thrilled to be here today and to see so many amazing people in New Hampshire who care about clean energy. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Dig Energy, and we're based right here in Manchester. I was born and raised in the Granite State, and I love everything about it. And I'm here today to talk to you about geothermal energy, which I think a lot of people think of being as a magical unicorn of energy. As we all know, to decarbonize our world, a successful energy transition will require the electrification of everything. And that's from your ovens to your cars to the way we heat and cool our homes, which is kind of crazy to think about. If we do this, and I actually don't know how to tell where we are in time, this is great. So if we do this, that will effectively double the load on the grid over the course of the next decade. And that doubling does not even include recent advances in fields like advanced computing, which we have all talked about. That's basically going to crush the grid, let alone a growing population and various other things that are going to be really, really tough. In its current state, with ongoing climate-related catastrophes, I think we all remember exactly what happened in April across our lovely state and how it sort of crushed everyone, or what we see in the Midwest and Texas. The grid right now is not equipped to handle the load and these additional challenges, which is a big thing to think about. When we think about this, if we're going to alleviate this problem, we need to mitigate what we are adding to the grid, right? As it turns out, heating, cooling, and humidity control make up more than 50% of a home's energy usage. And so we need energy efficient solutions to take things off of the grid. I really just want to add. This is an area we should address. Geothermal is the most readily available baseload energy source out there. Hoping nuclear can come along would be amazing if we can pair it with solar and other thermal storage solutions. I think it's like a team effect that we can really think about in terms of offsetting the carbonization of our world. What it is a massively flexible energy source. It can be used from everything from power generation to direct energy to storage and beyond, right? People think it can often only be accessed in super warm places with amazing thermal gradients like the American West or Iceland, but it can actually be accessed anywhere depending on your need and context, which is awesome to think about. People also think a lot about heat pumps, right? Like, mini splits are amazing. This is something I think we all think about. However, not all heat pumps are created equal, right? There's two kinds to think about. One is air source, one is geothermal. Most of you probably know this, right? Does everyone know about heat pumps here? I'm guessing this is the heat pump friendly audience. Air source heat pumps take the heat from the air, they put it through, they are able to convert it into the temperature you want from your home and then circulate it. This avoids the use of heating fuel and propane. Amazing, we all raise our hands for that. However, in a cold weather climate like New Hampshire, it does add to your electrical load because you're using electricity to make up the delta. Geothermal, on the other hand, uses a loop that goes into the ground, and you're able to heat or cool water traditionally, but then you bring up your heat pump and you use that water source at 50 to 55 degrees to go ahead and heat and cool your home. And so your thermal gradient that you need to achieve the delta is much smaller, which is awesome. There are, I believe, and I think everyone would hopefully think, right? Maybe John would think about it, the ideal solution for heating or cooling your home. It uses the Earth's constant temperature of 50 to 55 degrees, 10 to 15 feet underneath the surface. They're easy to maintain, and they work best with a set it and forget it mentality, which is often how people really want to think about their heating and cooling. Oak Ridge National Lab last year in December actually published a report that said that if we are able to deploy 5 million geothermal heat pumps per year, we can reduce electrical usage by 13% overall. That's even in a fully electrified future. You could reduce costs by $1 trillion and avoid the build out of 46,000 miles of road, which is crazy. Install costs can vary widely. It's largely driven by the square footage of your home, your demand, and your utility, but drilling makes up a huge portion of that cost. And I can tell you that's what we're working on, is bringing that portion down so we can actually make it affordable for developers like John, which would be a huge piece of getting them deployed. There are several federal and state mechanisms that help bring down the cost of a geothermal heat pump, right? This is something that I think everyone is thinking about if you care about energy, if you care about energy transition, but I really think that there's also more to be done, and I want to talk a little bit about that, which we'll get to in just a second. Thanks to the IRA, the lovely Inflation Reduction Act, something that's amazing is that geothermal heat pump installs have a 30% tax credit, which is uncapped. So as compared to the air source heat pump, which has a cap of $2,000, it's just a flat 30% across the total install cost, which is incredibly helpful when you think about a renovation of your HVAC system. Other states in New England have implemented rebates to lower the cost to homeowners. We have some, I think, super jazzy things to look at, which is amazing. We have some work we can do here in New Hampshire. And I think the biggest thing that we want to think about, and that I've heard, is that New Hampshire, right? We're frugal, we're very, very practicality driven. But we can look to existing examples nationwide of geothermal heat pump initiatives, especially from what I would call more permanent states, right? You can look at Indiana, you can look at Nebraska, South Dakota, Wisconsin. There are other states that I think can identify however they want to identify politically, but they're still doing the work to think about the energy transition. New Hampshire has some of the highest heating fuel usage and costs in the entire country, and I think it's incredibly important that when we think about this, we think about how we can reduce the actual utility load on homeowners. We can think about how we can affordably scale through the energy transition, and how we can all work together to make that possible.